Good morning, everyone. I hope you are enjoying your day so far, that you've enjoyed your first few sessions. My name is Alex Corey, and I'm the Manager of Outreach and Partnerships at the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children. I'm sure you've heard this spiel already, but just a few quick housekeeping items. You should be able to chat with the host and the panelists. So if you have any technical difficulties or maybe you need a resource, feel free to use the chat box in that way. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please utilize that Q&A box, and Dr. Weber will be answering questions after her presentation. So feel free to put those in as we go along. So let's get into our last session before our lunchtime panel. Dr. Candace Weber serves as the Chief of Partnerships at the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children, where she spearheads the creation, management, and implementation of strategic partnerships to support coalitions of early care and education advocates across Louisiana. As a recognized thought leader, Dr. Weber is frequently consulted for her insights on enhancing early education workforce compensation throughout the state. Utilizing data and research, she advises businesses, chambers of commerce, advocacy organizations, and early care and education professionals on initiatives that are really aimed at boosting workforce participation and strengthening the economy. So everyone give me a virtual round of applause for my friend and colleague, Dr. Candace Weber.
Thank you for that introduction, Alex. And let me share my screen. And all right, here we go. So again, welcome to this third session that's going to be all about local funding, the toolkit for strengthening early care and education in Louisiana communities throughout the state. Again, I am Candace Weber, Chief of Partnerships at the Policy Institute. And for those who are not familiar with the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children, just know that we are a statewide, nonpartisan nonprofit. We are grounded in data and research, and we use that data and research to really advance policies to ensure that Louisiana's youngest children are ready for success in school and later on in life. We do envision a Louisiana in which all children, birth to 4 is our sweet spot that we focus on, but we envision a Louisiana in which all young children are safe, healthy, and reach their full potential. The data and research and reporting that we do seek to be a source of nonpartisan, independent information on all issues concerning children ages birth to 4. We share that information to advocate and educate policymakers, parents, community leaders, anyone who wants to really understand the state of early care and education for children birth to 4 in our state. Here is our roadmap for this session. So just went through introductions about me, about the Policy Institute. Even though this session is about local funding strategies in Louisiana, I do think it's important to just kind of ground or frame around the importance of early care and education. If you have been attending sessions this morning, you probably have heard some of this already, so I will be very brief with sharing that information. And then we'll jump right into the local funding strategies available in Louisiana. I will also pair that with examples of communities throughout the state who are implementing some of the local funding strategies that we'll talk about. And then last but certainly not least, definitely want to leave you with resources and information if you're interested in taking another step to exploring some of these local funding strategies within your community. So with that being said, let's jump right in. With the importance of early care and education. And so like I mentioned, you know, if you've attended our welcome opening a couple of sessions, you've probably heard that the early experiences in life really matter. The first 1,100 days, which really is the first birth to 3 years of life of a child, critically important around brain development. And at the Policy Institute, we tend to think about the brain development of a child like building a house, starting with the foundation. And we all know how important it is to have the right material and just the sturdiness of a foundation of a house. Likewise, with child development, The early years matters most because 80% of brain development takes place from birth to 3. And then that shifts to 90% by the time a child turned age 4. Now, does that mean the brain stops growing and developing after 4? Absolutely not. But as you heard in our welcome from Dr. Henderson this morning, the brain synapses are probably firing off at the highest rate. And so these formative years are critically important. It provides the foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. And as I mentioned, we think about the brain like the foundation of a house. If it's not built right the first time, it could prove very difficult and expensive to fix later on. We also look at childcare and its importance as an economic development issue. And so there is a body of work that really supports and shows the social and economic outcomes when children experience quality childcare. So for example, children who experience quality childcare are more likely to graduate from high school, go on to a 4-year college. They're more likely to have a full-time job as an adult. Their earning potential is typically higher, better health outcomes. So, education is one of the social determinants of health. And children who experience quality child care tend to have better health outcomes. We've also seen longitudinal studies that show that children who participate or experience quality child care early on are less likely to get involved or participate in the criminal justice system later on. Overall, better quality of life. And so again, the residual benefits are just, numerous. And like I said, there's data to support that, but not just for the child, but also for the parents. And so it becomes a 2-generation benefit where there's one longitudinal study in particular, the Abecedarian study, which is the longest longitudinal study. I think it's on its 5th or maybe sixth decade of research, but not only were they following the outcomes of the children, but also the parents and the mothers. The mothers are living longer. They have attained higher educational levels, higher income, and just their economic mobility. So again, economic development in early childhood, there is a linkage there, and we have several data points to support that. And then we also look at childcare and its importance as a short-term workforce solution. So in Louisiana in particular, 2 out of 3 children under the age of 5 have all available parents in the household in the workforce who rely on having access to quality childcare so that they can go to school or go to work. At the same time, when there are breakdowns in childcare, so when parents have to miss work, leave work, change jobs, come in later, 3 out of 4 parents have recorded in our latest study have having to take off work when there are those type of breakdowns. And we want to quantify that as how it impacts our state's economy. It $1.3 billion. That's billion with a B. So it is significant when there are breakdowns in childcare, how that affects Louisiana's businesses. And then last but not least, I do want to highlight just childcare as its own industry. So the business of childcare and just the economic growth issue within the care industry in and of itself. And so at the Policy Institute, we did do a study earlier this year on compensation for the early education workforce. And so whereas Louisiana has one of the strongest accountability systems for our publicly funded child care centers, over half of them, of our early childhood teachers are making less than $15 an hour. Despite being highly credentialed and trained professionals in Louisiana, over 50% of our child care providers have either a child care certificate, bachelor's or master's degree, but yet we see the low wages. And as a result, when you think about recruitment and retention, our survey found that a significant number of early educators are considering leaving their jobs despite this being a field that they absolutely love. At the same time, you think about the cost of care. I know there was a previous session that talked about the cost of care, but in Louisiana, child care is an investment that can cost almost as much as in-state public college tuition. Just to give you a data point on that, on average, a family with 2 children in Louisiana is paying over $9,000 a year for childcare for 2 children. And then just to put context around that, I looked at Jefferson Parish, and for those who are not familiar with ALICE, ALICE is the asset limited income constrained but employed population. So this is what you would consider your true living paycheck to paycheck population. So 48% of households in Jefferson Parish would be considered ALICE. But yet childcare represents their greatest expense, averaging about $1,100 a month for 2 children. And so from an industry perspective, you have challenges with recruiting and retaining talent within the industry, but then also with the cost of care. Childcare businesses often operate on razor thin margins. And so again, the economic tensions are there, which is why there's a need for public assistance and funding and support. And so before we dive into where localities can step in and have stepped in to fill the gap, I did want to give just a high-level snapshot of public funding for early childhood education in Louisiana. Louisiana isn't different from other states in that the majority of public funding for early care and education comes from federal funding programs. And so the blue bars or the blue bars on the screen represents the federal funding, whereas the orange or highlighted bars above is state funding. And even though Louisiana has made significant strides over the last couple of years with increasing their funding, there still is a significant number of children who are at risk and in need of access to childcare. And that is where our local government, philanthropy, and municipalities have stepped in to raise millions of dollars for expanding early childhood education access for their communities. So these are the local funding streams and strategies available in Louisiana that I'm going to talk about. This list is not exhaustive. There are other strategies that we've looked at that's happening in other states that I'm happy to talk about as well. And then where you see the asterisk, we actually have sessions where some of these communities and organizations are going to specifically be talking about the local funding strategy that they've implemented. So I am going to explain it here, but I highly encourage you to attend our lunchtime panel. And then there are some afternoon sessions where you will have someone speaking directly to this particular funding strategy. All right, so starting with our Louisiana Early Childhood Education Fund. This fund is essentially our state matching fund. It was established in 2017. And essentially, this offers a dollar-for-dollar match to localities or organizations that raise funds or raise monies to expand high-quality child care access for children birth to 3 specifically. Typically, the community or organization through their Ready Start network, typically they will apply for the match through the Department of Education. Then it goes to the process where our Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, they will approve the funding request after they receive the, appropriate spending authority. And so that's more of the logistics, but essentially it is the community or organization applying for the match once they have raised the funds. To date, we have about 13 parishes or Ready Start networks who have qualified for the fund. But as you can see depicted here, we do anticipate the number of communities participating to really grow over time. And in case you're wondering, here are the funding sources for the Early Childhood Education Fund. And so as you can see, sports betting is the primary revenue source for the fund, with 25% of sports betting tax revenues go into the fund. We have fantasy sports betting, hemp-derived CBD products, those specialty license plates for our NBA team, the New Orleans Pelicans. We get half of the tax revenue for those. And then land-based casinos is also listed, but you see it has not generated any revenue yet because there is a threshold that the casinos have to hit before we can realize some of those funds. And then, of course, the interest earnings. And so revenue for last year was about 15 million. But if you attended a previous session earlier this morning, you see that with the increasing number of communities that are qualifying and applying for the match, we are at risk of exceeding the amount available. So there's always going to be a need and drive to continue to keep funds in this particular early childhood education fund. The next funding strategy that we've seen is around local property millages. Again, shameless plug for our lunchtime panel where you will hear from the city of New Orleans and what they've done to actually implement this particular strategy. But really, the millage is the tax rate that applies in a calculation of a specific property tax levy. And so typically when a property tax proposition is put before the voters, it's for a certain rate for a certain period of time. And so, for example, in New Orleans, I believe they had found a tax rate or a millage that was expiring and was able to repurpose it. And they have secured funding for their early childhood City Seats program for the next 20 years. And so you'll definitely want to check them out or listen to that discussion during our lunchtime panel to learn more. But again, we are seeing a growing number of cities and states across the country who are now leveraging and repurposing expiring millages to allocate a portion of funds to their early childhood programs. The next one, Louisiana School Readiness Tax Credits for businesses. Again, you will hear from two organizations that will specifically talk about this particular funding strategy. And they're both located in rural communities, which I think is really cool because we know rural communities just have unique needs versus some of our more heavily populated or dense populations around the state. But just for context, Louisiana was actually the first state in the nation to establish school readiness tax credits back in 2007. And the intent is really for the tax to reduce the taxes paid for individuals and businesses dollar for dollar. For the purposes of this particular presentation, I'm going to focus on the business tax credits, where it really shows a place where the business community can lean in to support not only their employees, but the communities in which they are operating their business. It provides a credit for businesses that have donated funds to child care centers to support eligible child care expenses. And so the chart that you see on the left is the classification or the eligible expenses that a business could receive a tax credit. And I just do want to note, unlike a tax deduction, a tax credit is the whole value of the credit, regardless of the tax bracket in which the taxpayer falls. And so these tax credits are also refundable, meaning that if they are available to a taxpayer, even if they don't owe taxes. And so, for example, if the tax credit exceeds the tax burden, then guess what? The taxpayer will receive a check for the difference after filing their taxes. And so businesses could invest, or support construction, renovation, expansion of a child care center. They can pay for seats made to an eligible child care facility, or they can purchase seats at a specific child care facility specific for their employees. And so there's a number of ways that businesses can get involved. But again, you will hear more about this particular strategy at lunchtime. And then there's a session this afternoon where you'll hear specifically about this particular funding strategy in action. The next one, I think this one will be a part of lunchtime panel for New Orleans, but line items in municipal or parish budgets. I do want to highlight Jefferson Ready Start, which is in Jefferson Parish. Their parish council initially allocated $250,000 in its parish budget to support the expansion of quality child care seats to the local residents. Then in May of 22, the Business Council donated 30,000 to their Network Future Fund, which also made them qualify for the early childhood match, so that incentive fund. So then now you have your dollar for dollar match. And then 3 months later, their parish council allocated another 275,000 of its budget to support early care and education efforts for a second year in a row. And I do see that they continue to support and now have that as a line item in their parish budget. There are other cities and parishes throughout the state who have done this. So again, you will hear more about this particular strategy at the lunchtime panel as well. Next, I'd like to talk about juvenile justice prevention funds. And so during legislative session in 2022, Act 627 was passed, which means that municipalities or certain parishes can now repurpose juvenile justice funds to early childhood education, because it's categorized or eligible as a preventive service for young children and their families. And so specifically in Ascension Parish, at the time, the parish was looking at or considering building another juvenile detention facility within the parish. But in looking at the funds and the cost, they made, with the passage of this particular bill, it allowed them to, instead of building a juvenile justice facility, let's prevent kids from going into the juvenile justice system by investing in childcare in our region. And so this is a part of their plans to expand the Wagaspack Center and Park, which has provided opportunities for children to play, receive academic support, and foster positive interactions with members of law enforcement. And so they have a whole initiative that was already in play. And this particular funding strategy was done with the support from several community leaders and partners in Ascension Parish. The next one is our micro center model, or said differently, just repurposing unused space in public facilities. And so the micro center uses low cost or no cost space. Typically it's through partnerships with public schools, charter schools, private schools, could be local businesses who have the available space. And essentially they open an early childhood classroom. And so a micro center, you will have a childcare provider essentially not having to have any operating costs because the facility is holding the space. This is a licensed childcare provider, typically high quality rated. And a micro center operates in all other respects in the same manner as a traditional childcare center. They have to meet the teacher-child ratio requirements, the quality standards. And I am highlighting, in this case, in East Baton Rouge Parish, you have the child care provider, Kids Carousel, high quality child care center who has space within some of the empty classrooms within, I think, 2 schools in East Baton Rouge Parish. And then there's also space within our healthcare system. Our Lady of the Lake had available space where Kids Carousel is operating out of, so that their staff and employees have a quality child care center on site. The next one, private investment. Again, plug for lunchtime panel, but this is where we also have seen the business community and philanthropy make significant investments in early care and education for their region. So just highlighting Shreveport, who you will hear from on the lunchtime panel, but they were able to engage local business leaders, other philanthropic organizations to fundraise $1 million to support the expansion of quality childcare to its residents. And with the success and the success of that effort, it encouraged the city council in Shreveport to approve an ordinance to provide funding for the city's early start initiative. And so, that program continues to run today. Again, you'll hear more from them during the lunchtime panel, but this is, there are several regions around the state where their philanthropic organizations have stepped in as well, but private investment is one of a popular funding strategy, which also still, qualifies for the matching fund as well. I will say, I went through this really quite fast because I did want to also leave room for Q&A, but the entire local funding toolkit is available on our website. I just went through the funding strategies that are available in Louisiana, but the full toolkit also looks at other funding strategies that we have seen in other states. So whether it's through municipal bonds, some community reinvestment funding with partnerships with banks. And so please check it out on our website. Also, I believe Alex may have just dropped it in the chat, but then just showing you how to navigate on our website if you want to just download the full toolkit there as well. It's under the research tab under local initiatives. And with that being said, for if you want more information or assistance with exploring any of these local funding strategies in your region, we are happy to partner with you and work with you on that. So of course, you can visit our website, which is listed there. And also you can contact me directly to get you going. So with that, I will stop my share and looking forward to questions and dialogue with all of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weber. We do have a few questions. I also just want to note, feel free to continue adding questions into the Q&A box, or if you would rather ask your question with your mic on, then feel free to raise your hand, and then I can allow you to unmute, and then y'all can have dialogue that way. So our first question is from Aaron St. Pierre, and it says, per your comment about the $23 per hour, is that the hourly wage necessary to support a family with 2 working parents and 2 children? Is that $23 an hour combined hourly rate for both parents, or is that the rate that each parent needs to earn to support that family of 4?
For that one, it would be each. Typically, when we look at like a single household, $23, but that would be for each. So thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Our next question is from Yvonne Crummins. Are most businesses aware of the school readiness tax credit? How do we get that information out? And then is there any way to know what percentage of businesses in a certain parish participate?
Great question. And so most businesses, what we're finding, are not aware. And so I will say at the Policy Institute, we're even looking at maybe relaunching and rebranding the name, or what we call the tax credits. And as you saw, it was established back in 2007. That was quite some time ago. I will also say that the current benefits of the school readiness tax credits have not kept up with the cost of care to make it the most attractive to businesses. So I said, I think the cap was up to $5,000 per child. We know on average, I think in the previous presentation, we saw a parent is spending $9,000, $10,000 for children. So, but we are talking about having a more brand awareness campaign so that more businesses can know about it. I will say the participation rate is relatively low, but there is data where we can see how much, who's applying or who's taking advantage of it. But like I said, it's very, very low. But we are looking at that heavily to see what we can do to increase participation, but then also make it more attractive and worthwhile for businesses to participate and lean in, because we know the economic impacts from it.
You, Dr. Weber. And then could you also speak to the school readiness tax credits, how they can donate to CCR&Rs, maybe explain a little bit about what CCR&Rs are?
Yes, so CCR&R stands for your Child Care Resource and Referral Agency. And so this, think of them as the group that really helps the child care centers in their region. And so, as I mentioned, with our school readiness tax credits, there's actually 5. I focused on the one for businesses, but one of the options is for the CCR&R, where a business individual can make the donation, and then the child care resource and referral agencies working within the network can decide how and where those funds for seats are going to be made? Great question.
I just want to note Melissa Erickson said that the awareness of school readiness tax credits is really low in the greater New Orleans area, but it's high in areas like Point Capee, which we'll be hearing from later, and then also in Monroe, which we'll be
Yep.
hearing at our lunchtime panel. And so she's really working on changing that and bringing more awareness to the greater New Orleans area. So if you're in the greater New Orleans area and would like to partner with Melissa, in the lobby, you'll have the opportunity to find Melissa's name of the attendees, and then you can private chat. Y'all can network and connect that way.
Yes, love that. Again, shameless plug. You'll hear from those two groups specifically, Point Capee Early Childhood Coalition, and from Monroe, the Children's Coalition of Northeast Louisiana, who will speak specifically to the SRTCs. So,
And then Melissa also put her email address in the chat
perfect,
box. So I've just reshared that as well.
perfect, perfect.
Um, Lemetra says, as a childcare owner in a rural area, how do I get this conversation started with businesses in the area about the tax credit?
Yes, and so I'm going to make another plug for Point Capee and Monroe because there are also rural areas who have done this. I know, for example, in Point Capee, not to steal their thunder, but there's a lot of agriculture and farming industry that they have gone out and just met with them. At the Policy Institute, we do supply data or can equip you with information so that they can understand why this matters. And then also, tax professionals, any CPA that looks at our SRTCs will be like, this is a no-brainer. Why are we not doing this? It's a tax credit, not deduction, but really would like to connect with you more. Also would encourage you to, if you can, attend that 1 o'clock session with Point Capee, who really, did the groundwork to engage their community around this tax credit. And they have raised in the millions. So same with Monroe. So I'm very excited. And again, both are rural communities. So I think you'll get a lot out of that session as well.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. I saw someone's hand was raised.
Thanks for the shout out. Yes.
Oh, I think they put it down.
Yes.
Yes. And then Sorrentha Strickland is the contact for school readiness tax credits in Jefferson. So I'm just going to put that in the chat box if you want to connect.
Yeah, phenomenal resources. And like I said, I mean, there are several areas throughout the state that are applying, all of the strategies that I mentioned. So I just highlighted a few, explained a few. Like I said, we have some sessions where you hear specific and ask us specific questions too, like how did you guys do it? What did you learn? What would you do differently? And so again, I think it'll be very, very insightful. I see Ashley Jolly. Hello, Ashley. Who should we contact in St. Bernard? So you guys are still part of uh
Agenda.
agendas CCR&R. So we can get you that contact, but Alex dropped the link in the chat. But we can follow up if you don't get a contact there. Oh,
Feel
did you
free
get
to
it there?
send
Yep, you got it.
Candace or I an email if you're not able to connect with Agenda if you lose the email. All right, Ms. Sonia Young Bailey, who has followed Candace and I this whole morning
I
into
love
our
it.
sessions. We love to see it.
Yeah.
Sonia, what's your question?
Hello again, ladies. The question that I want to add that I have is, are there ever anything in Louisiana with like childcare that's actually in person? Because since I've been here, everything's online. And I know that that's a result of COVID-19. And I know y'all switched your format for that. But do you ever foresee a time where people can actually network in person? Because I feel like that's really valuable because I've been in the childcare industry for over like I'm going on, I would say combined different times about 25 years.
Mhm.
And childcare providers really benefit from the social interaction with others. And they also give each other really great feedback and help each other. And it's not even just like just information on how to navigate different things, but also the support system that it provides. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the answer is yes. Yes, there are several in-person events like this. So I'll just plug a few organizations that host, and I see people are putting in the chat, events. So Child Care Association just had their annual conference in person. We also had for providers by providers that had their annual conference for providers in person. At the Policy Institute for Children, we are also co-founder of Ready Louisiana Coalition, where we host Early Ed Day at the Capitol, which people come in, providers, parents from around the state to advocate for our littles. And so that is in person. There is our, they put our Lacey information in the chat. So there are a lot of in-person events. Like I said, unfortunately, this one we had to pivot because of special session, but I totally agree with you with providers needing to have that connection. And then even the Department of Education now has their own early childhood conference. And I think they do it maybe twice a year now. It used to be with the Teacher Leader Summit in the summer with K-12 educators, but I think last year, or maybe the year before last, they started having it separately. And so there are other opportunities where so I can list those for you in the post session materials, but that is a great question, and you're right. The other thing that I thought about is even your Ready Start networks. So I know, for example, in St. Tammany, and Aaron, I know you're on, so you probably can speak to this better than I can, but they also have in-person events and activities as well around their Ready Start, whether it's recruitment or fundraising, or, meetings with their childcare providers within the region. So.
thank you.
I've put some of those links in the chat. We'll also capture them and provide them in the symposium notes as well, so you'll be able to access them after the event.
Yes, and I see your comment, Dr. Vincent. Yes, looking forward to it. We're happy to connect with you guys.
See, the chat box is clear and the Q&A box is clear, but are there any lingering questions, additional questions for Dr. Weber?
One last thing I will say, since we have a little time, please stay connected with us. February in Louisiana is Early Ed Month, where we literally travel around the state to advocate and build awareness for early childhood education. And so if we are in your area, like I said, just connect with us so you can stay in the know, where the site visits are going to be held. Great opportunity to connect with your policymaker or the business community leaders in the area, just to really understand early childhood, but also, they like to hear from providers and teachers, or like I said, if you just want to even understand what a quality child care center looks like, that will be happening throughout the month of February. We will have a full calendar, but if you just sign up on our website for our newsletter, you will get all the information as well. So please stay connected with us.
Thank you, Dr. Weber, and thank you all so much for joining us. When this session ends, the Zoom app's going to close out. You'll be brought back to that event lobby. Please take a quick moment to complete that survey. It should take like less than a minute. 5 really quick questions. It'll pop up in the top right of your screen. And if you haven't already, please complete the survey for the other sessions that you've attended. It's really helpful for us in seeing, what you all like hearing, what you want to hear more of. For now, you have a little bit of a lunch break. So in about 20 minutes at 11:55, we will join the lunchtime panel session and we will hear more information about how experts from across the state are using some of these strategies that Dr. Weber mentioned to fund early childhood education, specifically in their communities. We just saw we get a lot of funding from the federal government, and then we never know what state funding is going to look like. And so this local investment is really, really important for early childhood education. If If you have any additional questions, our support team is here to help. So thank y'all again and enjoy your quick lunch break.
Thanks, everyone.